Correct the punctuation of this script, she said. You work here as a janitor. Ha, must be tough being poor. Those condescending words came from Cindy, my brother's wife. Even after not seeing each other for a while, she said this with a snide laugh. For a while now, I've been aware that she doesn't hold me in high regard. I had hoped we drifted apart enough that I'd never have to encounter her again. How mistaken I was. But this time, I refused to yield. The mere fact of her presence here, well, you'll soon understand. Suppressing the chuckle, I maintain my composure and reply. Her expression freezes in an instant as my words sink in. My name's Lita, 30 years old. At home, it's me, my husband Lucas, and our daughter Layla. Lucas and I, we've been an item since college days. Started dating after we both joined the same club. 4 years into dating, we tied the knot when I hit 26. Next thing we knew, we welcomed Layla into our lives, smooth sailing all through the pregnancy. 3 years on, she's thriving, not a single health hiccup in sight. Sadly, Lucas folks aren't around anymore to witness her growth. But my parents, they're pouring all their love onto her, making up for the missing grandparents. Our condo sits just a 10-minute drive away from my childhood abode. Originally, Lucas and I were slated to remain there. My parents had hoped we'd stay under the same roof after tying the knot. Life was serene dwelling with my gentle husband and affectionate parents. However, that tranquility was shattered about 6 months into our union. Enter my brother Cedric, along with his wife. I hadn't laid eyes on him in nearly 5 years. Cedric had severed ties with our parents, dropped out of college, and vanished from home. His whereabouts remained a mystery until he sent a text announcing his marriage. Not a word of congratulations, and he was conspicuously absent from family gatherings, including our wedding. So, you can fathom my astonishment and ire when he suddenly reappeared. Yet I resolved to lend him an ear. What he and his wife divulged, however, far surpassed our expectations. Upon his return home after years, he confronted Dad, saying, "Dad, Cindy and I have made the decision to move in here with you." What in the world? You've been MIA for years, and now you just waltz back in? Listen, I understand it's not ideal, but I'm married now, and living with you seems like the least I can do, doesn't it? Don't be absurd. You didn't even bother showing up to Lita's wedding. Well, I apologize for that, but as your son, it's my obligation to be here. So Lita and her husband will have to find another place. Suddenly, a chill fills the room, leaving even Dad speechless. In the midst of this tense atmosphere, I find my voice. Wait just a minute. You can't simply barge in here and declare that Lucas and I are moving out. And why not? Are you just trying to butter up Dad to snag the house for yourselves? What? That's absurd. I simply want to be close to my parents. You're just a daughter. A son, especially the eldest like me, takes precedence even in matters of living arrangements. Just because you're the son, just because you're the oldest. So what? You dropped out of college by your own choice. You left home by your own choice. I can't tolerate this nonsense any longer. Just leave. I seize my brother by the arm and usher him towards the front door. Our argument persists even as we stand by the threshold, but Cindy interjects. Let's just head home for today. Reluctantly, my brother departs. The ordeal leaves my parents and husband utterly exhausted. We're all anxious about what my brother might do next. A few days later, the doorbell chimes. As I swing open the door, a stranger stands on the threshold, accompanied by a mover's truck parked outside. Perplexed, I inquire, "Are you from the moving company? I believe you may have the wrong address." "Nope, this is the correct address. We're here to handle the move for Cedric." "Cedric? My brother? Ah, I see, your family. My apologies, please come in." "Wait, just a moment." The mover signals his crew, and soon several men begin ferrying boxes into our house. I had no inkling about my brother's move, not a single word. With my parents away, I couldn't verify with them. Fearing I might be the last to know, I hurried upstairs to find my husband. "Lucas, have you heard anything about my brother moving in?" "What? What are you saying? That's impossible." "Then come see for yourself. Movers are bringing in his belongings." "What? This is news to me." "Forget it, just come." I tug my husband downstairs. The hallway is already cluttered with boxes and the movers are swiftly adding more. My husband attempts to intervene, but they counter. "We're simply following instructions. Your family, correct?" We attempt to reach my brother, but there's no response. Our calls to my parents go unanswered as well. Their phones are on silent. Eventually, all the boxes are inside, and the movers depart without a further word. Confronted by the stack of boxes, we both grapple to comprehend what's unfolding. What's happening? Why does my brother have all this stuff here? Is he planning to move in without informing Dad or us? We ponder the worst-case scenario, opting to await our parents' return to strategize. However, an hour later, it's my brother and his wife who arrive first. "Hey, Lita, we're moving in. You'd better clear out." "Brother, did you really move your stuff here without informing anyone?" "Why? This was originally my home. What's the issue with bringing my belongings back?" "What?" Amidst our argument, a mocking laugh echoes from behind. I whirl around to find Cindy sporting a smug grin. Catching my stare, she offers a faux apology, devoid of any sincerity. Then, she proceeds to taunt me with a brazen remark. "So, you must be Lita, huh? Can't seem to heed Cedric's wishes or something. How juvenile can you get?" "Pardon me, what's all this about?" Just for the record, my brother made the decision to leave college and move out on his own. Why dredge this up now? Haven't you heard? Cedric's moved back in to reside with your parents. Quite the dutiful son, isn't he? Listen, we never asked for any of this. This is our home, where my husband and I reside, so please kindly leave. Too late, we've already relinquished our condo. What? Regardless, it's you two who need to vacate, not us. Best of luck. With that, Cindy and my brother proceed to unpack. Later, when my parents return home, they confront my brother, yet he and his wife adamantly refuse to depart. From that moment onward, life takes a turn for the worse. Every day, my husband and I endure insults from my brother and Cindy. They casually use and damage our belongings. When we demand an apology, they brush it off with, "We're family, so what's the big deal?" Even when my pregnancy is confirmed, Cindy remarks, "Lita, you're just a homemaker, aren't you? And Lucas's company is merely average. Your child will be born into poverty. It's quite pitiful. Why are you having a baby before us? Can't you see the situation?" I feel my mental state beginning to deteriorate. Eventually, simply being in their presence brings tears to my eyes, and I find myself retreating to my room, spending entire days locked away. Witnessing this, my parents suggest to my husband that we consider parting ways. If anything were to happen to our unborn child, it would be too late. It seems my parents convinced my husband to swiftly find a new place for us to live away from their home. Without delay, he secures a new residence, and we relocate. Life suddenly becomes serene as if the past were a distant fabrication. While the initial period post-move feels uncertain, with my husband's unwavering support, I manage to navigate through. I remove my brother's contact from my phone and implore my parents not to disclose our address to him and Cindy. Gradually, my parents begin visiting us frequently, seemingly disregarding my brother and Cindy at the family abode. They inquire about the living expenses and rent they'll be covering for us. When my brother and Cindy refuse to contribute, my parents start discarding their belongings into the yard. Unable to endure such treatment, they eventually relocate. Nearly 3 years have passed, and I haven't laid eyes on them. Though we toyed with the idea of moving back in with my parents, the uncertainty of my brother's return kept us from considering it seriously. Living under the same roof wasn't an option I was willing to entertain. Additionally, our family home was showing signs of age. Lately, the idea of my parents relocating to our condo had been floated. And then, just like any other day, as I stepped out the front door for a bit of shopping, I spotted a familiar face. Instantly, a wave of unpleasant memories washed over me. "Oh my gosh, is that you, Lita?" Oh dear, it was Cindy who greeted me with those words. "Why are you here?" "Why wouldn't I be? I'm just here to explore this fancy apartment building." "Explore? You're not thinking of moving in here with my brother, are you?" "Well, that's a secret, but bumping into you is quite the unexpected twist. Still facing financial struggles?" "Excuse me." Struggling with amusement, Cindy flashed a smug grin. Then she gestured towards my outfit and continued, "That inexpensive sweater and those skinny jeans. Money must be tight for you, huh? Heading out of here looking like that, I see. What are you implying?" "Poor dear, you have a child now, don't you? It's just so unfortunate." "What's unfortunate about it? My husband and I are contentedly raising our child." "Don't get all defensive. Someone like you with no redeeming qualities shouldn't even be having a kid. Talk about delusional." Cindy burst out laughing. That was the final straw. I reached my limit. Nothing had changed since our last encounter. If anything, she seemed even more intent on tearing people down. I couldn't tolerate it any longer. I'd had enough. I steeled myself, preparing to respond. Look, what's your problem? I understand you don't like me, but can we just avoid getting involved with each other? What's the rush? Worried I caught you at your most pathetic moment. What are you talking about? Don't act clueless. You're a janitor here, right? Must be rough, struggling financially. Laughter. As it turned out, she mistook me for a janitor, not a resident. It was an understandable error. The high-end apartment building I resided in was so luxurious that it seemed improbable we could afford it solely on my husband's income. Cindy, aware of my husband's workplace, presumed our financial constraints. With a contemptuous tone, she pressed on. It's absurd. You're resorting to working as a janitor just to be near this place. You must be truly desperate. Laughter. Lita, can you stop jumping to conclusions? I'm not the janitor. Oh, lighten up. How about this? I'll keep quiet about seeing you here to Cedric. But in return, starting today, you'll be my servant. You'll do whatever I say. Got it. She's assuming I'm the janitor in this upscale apartment building and making a childish demand. I've reached my limit. It's time to bring her back to reality. Excuse me, what exactly are you misunderstanding? This is my residence. Cindy, who had been grinning just moments ago, now freezes in disbelief. Ignoring her obvious astonishment, I continue. Allow me to clarify. This is the place where I reside, and it's owned by my husband. Wait, what are you saying? Ignoring her shock, I press on. This luxury apartment was initially among the properties owned by my husband's parents. Now, it's passed on to my husband, who manages it through a real estate agent. The reason my husband swiftly found us a new home is because he owns this place. It was inherited from his parents and was originally designated for renting out. He arranged it to shield me from my brother and his wife. Recently, I've started assisting the real estate agent to ease my husband's workload. Her name should have rung a bell for me from the beginning. My husband and I never spotted my brother's or Cindy's names on the list of potential renters provided by the real estate agent. Cindy, who did you come here with today? What? I came with Cedric, obviously. I didn't hear my brother's name from the real estate agent. So you arrived with someone else? Impossible. I came with Cedric. And at that moment, an unfamiliar man hurries up from behind her and says, Sorry for the delay. He drapes his arm around Cindy's waist and plants an affectionate kiss on her cheek. In that instant, the pieces fall into place for me. Cindy too senses that I've caught on, hastily distancing herself from the man. I'm sure he can hear me as I speak up. Cindy, are you certain it's appropriate to be in this situation? Engaging in such gallivanting as a housewife. You might exhaust my brother, you know. Hey, what are you implying? Oh, what do we have here? A married woman out on a date with another man? Or is he simply a friend? I need to inform my brother. Please just stop. Her plea is desperate, tears glistening in her eyes. But I can't hold back any longer. Addressing her firmly, I ignore her silent pleas, determined not to let any more unwarranted remarks slip. You've got some nerve, don't you? Bringing misery, pushing people to their breaking point. And you haven't changed at all. And now, you're cheating. You've hit rock bottom. Wait, Lita, please. Enough. Because of you and my brother, I've endured so much. How dare you ridicule others without a hint of remorse? I'll never forgive either of you. You'll feel the agony I've endured, and then some. At my words, she crumples to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. And just like that, Cindy's affair is exposed. Upon my report to my brother, it's revealed she was also concealing her existing marriage, and I've been urging her lover to purchase this upscale apartment for her. Caught in the act, Cindy finds herself sued for marriage fraud by her lover. Shockingly, my brother is also discovered to be having an affair with a coworker. His infidelity is unveiled around the same time at his workplace, resulting in his demotion to a provincial office. Cindy purportedly follows him, yet they both continue to blame each other for their misfortunes. Both are slapped with hefty fines, Cindy by her lover and my brother by the lover's spouse. Unable to cover the expenses with Cindy's former housewife status and my brother's reduced salary, they resort to illegal lenders. Recently, it seems they have a long road ahead to straighten out their lives. And no, I won't be lending a hand. As for me, life continues to be blissful with my family of 3. Thanks to my husband's kindness, my parents will also be relocating to the same high-rise apartment building next month. While we won't be sharing a living space, it's another means of staying close to them. I couldn't be more thankful to my husband. I intend to embrace life to the fullest, cherishing those dear to me. Everyone was really excited as my daughter Marissa's wedding rehearsal dinner got going. I felt proud watching her and her fiancé Kevin, surrounded by our family and friends, getting lots of good wishes. But then something unexpected happened. Marissa spoke up, asking for everyone's attention. The room went quiet. My husband Ron and I looked at each other, confused. Marissa raised her glass. "I want to talk about something important," she said, looking right at me. "Elise, you might think of yourself as my stepmother, but to me, you're just someone I don't want in my life." The guests were shocked, and Ron looked really pale. I felt like I'd been hit hard, like all the air had been knocked out of me by what Marissa said. "What's going on, Marissa?" Ron asked, sounding shaky and shocked. "Don't act like you don't know, Dad," Marissa said with a sneer. "You know that Elise has been trying to become a part of our family since the beginning. Well, I'm done pretending she's not my mom, because she never will be." Her words felt like a sharp knife stabbing into me. I looked at Marissa, hoping to see the loving girl I once knew, but all I saw was hatred. "Marissa, please, let's not do this now," I begged, my voice shaking with emotion. "Why not?" she snapped back. "This is my day, and I'll say whatever I want." Ron clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. "That's enough," he said firmly. "We're leaving." Marissa just smirked and turned away, leaving me to face the stares and whispers from the guests. As we walked out, I could feel their judgmental eyes on me, wondering what I'd done to make my own stepdaughter hate me so much. Tears streamed down my face, and I realized everything had changed. In the car, Ron held the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, his face filled with anger and sadness. "I don't understand what's wrong with her, Elise," he said, his voice strained. "But I won't let her hurt you like this." I just nodded, feeling overwhelmed as we drove away from what should have been a happy night, now ruined. I wondered what had happened to the sweet girl Marissa used to be and what this meant for our family. It's hard to say when Marissa started hating me. Maybe it was when I married her dad and became her stepmom. Or maybe it started even earlier, influenced by her mom, Clara. "Don't worry, honey," Clara had told Marissa, running her fingers through her hair. "No one can take your real mom's place." Even then, Clara's words made me feel uneasy, but I tried to ignore it. I wanted to build a good relationship with Marissa, my new stepdaughter. "I'm not here to take anyone's place," I told Marissa gently. "I just want us to be friends." She nodded, but her eyes showed no warmth or love. It felt like there was a barrier between us, fueled by her mom's hurtful words. At first, Marissa was polite, but distant. But as time went on, her true feelings came out. "Why are you always trying to get involved in my life?" she snapped one evening when I asked about her weekend plans. Ron gave Marissa a disapproving look. "Marissa, don't talk to your mom like that." "She's not my mom," Marissa yelled, her face full of anger. "And I'm tired of her pretending she is." Then she stormed off, leaving me hurt by her harsh words. Ron could only shake his head, looking disappointed and resigned. After that, Marissa's dislike for me was obvious. She'd roll her eyes when I came into a room and make mean comments quietly. If I offered help, she'd reject it rudely, like she couldn't stand being around me. "You're not fooling anyone with your fake kindness," she sneered one day when I asked if she wanted a ride to her friend's house. "Marissa, stop it," Ron said, getting frustrated. But she didn't listen. It was clear Clara encouraged Marissa's hatred toward me. Whenever we saw her, she'd smile sweetly, like she was happy we didn't get along. "I don't know what you've done to make my daughter hate you," she'd say with a fake smile, her eyes filled with mean intentions. "But I guess you'll have to deal with the consequences." And deal with them I did. Marissa's hatred kept growing, like a wound that wouldn't heal, making our family life miserable every day. But I didn't realize then that her hurtful behavior was just the beginning of something much worse. Marissa became even more manipulative and mean after she quit college. Without a plan for her future, she seemed determined to cause trouble in our lives, using her anger to get money and create chaos in our family. "Give me $5,000, or I'll tell everyone how terrible you've been as a stepmom," she said one day, trapping me in the kitchen. I was shocked. "Marissa, why are you saying this? I've tried my best to be good to you." "Forget it," she snapped. "Just give me the money, and I'll leave you alone." I felt desperate as I realized how low she was willing to go. I don't have that much money right now. Then you better find it unless you want everyone to know how bad you are. After that, it happened often. Marissa kept asking for more money, and her threats got worse each time I said no. Ron was stuck in the middle, trying to make both of us happy and wondering why his daughter was acting like this. Please just give her what she wants, he pleaded with me one night after another big fight. I can't handle all this arguing. But I knew that giving in would only make things worse. So even as Marissa's threats got scarier, I stuck to my decision. You think you're so perfect with your job at the high school, she sneered. Just wait until everyone sees who you really are. Her words scared me. I could only imagine the terrible lies she might spread, ruining my reputation with my coworkers and the students I cared for. Through everything, Clara was always there, silently supporting her daughter's mean actions. You get what you give, Elise, she'd say when she visited, making me feel even worse. Maybe if you were a better stepmom, Marissa wouldn't act like this. Her words hurt so much, making me feel angry, betrayed, and lost. But in the middle of all this chaos, I started to feel determined. I couldn't just sit back and let Marissa and Clara keep hurting us. If Marissa wanted a fight, she'd get one. It was time to stand up for myself and my family. I needed to show everyone the truth about Marissa's cruelty, even if it meant doing things I never thought I could do. From then on, I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to keep my family safe, even if it meant doing things I never thought I'd have to do. As Marissa's wedding day got closer, she kept asking for more and treating me worse. It felt like she enjoyed making me suffer, testing how much I could take before I broke down. I need $3,000 more for my dress alterations, she said one evening, not even saying hello as she came into the living room. Ron looked at me, begging me to give in, but I couldn't take it anymore. No, Marissa, I've had enough. She acted surprised. What are you going to do, Elise? Cry to Daddy like you always do. I clenched my fists, feeling furious. You ungrateful child. Your dad and I have done everything for you, and this is how you treat us. Marissa laughed, making me even angrier. You're not fooling anyone. You're just a sad, insecure woman trying to buy your way into our family. Her words hurt, but before I could say anything, she said one more thing. You think the school wants someone like you? Marissa said, her voice dripping with malice. Just wait until they find out about your drinking problem. I felt sick to my stomach. Marissa was planning to ruin my career and reputation with lies. Marissa, stop it, Ron yelled, furious, but she just smirked, enjoying the mess she'd made. In that moment, something changed in me. I felt determined to stay strong against all the hurt and anger. I'm done being a victim, I said, my voice firm and steady. Leave and don't come back until you can act like a decent person. Marissa looked surprised by my defiance at first, but then she smirked and leaned in close. You'll regret this, she whispered, her breath hot on my face. With those words, she stormed out, leaving a tense silence behind her. Ron looked at me, seeming lost. I'm sorry, Elise. I don't know what's wrong with her, he said, rubbing his temples. But I knew this wasn't sudden. It was years of Clara's influence. As I thought about Marissa's threats, I felt determined. She thought she could ruin my life with lies, but she was wrong. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one, and I wouldn't play by her rules. Marissa's threats kept replaying in my head, making me more determined to expose her true self before it was too late. I knew I couldn't rely on Ron for help. His love for his daughter made him blind to her cruelty. So I had to handle this on my own. That's when Derek came into the picture. He used to be Marissa's boyfriend before she changed. We ran into each other at the grocery store, and we started talking. Soon, everything started to make sense. She's not who you think she is, Derek told me, looking regretful. She lied to me about you and Ron. I felt really scared when he told me about all the bad things Marissa did. He said Marissa made up stories about me, saying I was trying to control their family and that Ron was mean to them. He believed her because she seemed so sure and angry. But he only realized she was lying after we broke up. As he talked, I started to see how sneaky Marissa really was. She made up lots of lies to make everyone think badly of me. Her mom, Clara, was the one behind it all. Like she was controlling everything behind the scenes. Derek told me that Marissa's mom has been poisoning Marissa's thoughts about you from the very beginning. I realized, feeling sick to my stomach. She's been putting all these twisted ideas in her head, like you were trying to replace her mom. Everything suddenly made sense. I had been the target of their mean plan all along, made out to be the bad person in their story. But Derek didn't stop there. He said Marissa's getting married for the wrong reasons. Not because she loves Kevin, but because she wants his money and status. Marissa doesn't really care about Kevin, Derek said with a laugh. She's just using him to get what she wants. Once she's got what she needs, she'll leave him and find someone else to use. His words shook me to my core. I had always had a feeling that Marissa didn't truly care, but hearing it so plainly was hard to take. After Derek left, my head was spinning with everything he'd said. I'd been letting Marissa and her mom control everything for too long. But now, armed with the truth, I knew I had to do something. It was time to stand up to them, to show everyone what was really going on. No more pretending to be the victim, no more being scared of their lies. I was ready to fight back. On the day of Marissa's wedding, the air was tense as I watched her get ready. But I was determined. This was the day I would reveal the truth. "You look so pretty, my dear," Clara said sweetly, fixing Marissa's veil with a smile. Just like a princess on her big day. Marissa glowed with happiness, soaking up her mother's praise like a flower soaking up sunlight. But it made me feel uneasy. "Yes, it's like a fairy tale," I remarked, unable to hold back, with a handsome prince and a mean stepmother. Clara's eyes narrowed, but Marissa just laughed, not seeming to understand or care about what I meant. "Speaking of mean stepmothers," she said calmly, "I'm surprised you came at all. After how you've been treating me, I thought you might skip the whole thing." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, believe me, I thought about it, but I couldn't miss this moment." Before Marissa could say anything, Ron popped his head into the room with a forced smile. "Everything okay here?" he asked. "Just fine, Dad," Marissa replied sweetly. "Elias and I were just chatting." Her tone dripped with sarcasm, but Ron ignored it. "Well, it's almost time. You ready?" Marissa nodded eagerly, ready to make her entrance. As the music started and the doors opened, I took a deep breath, getting ready for what I had to do. The ceremony went by quickly, with vows that felt empty and fake. But when it came time for Kevin and Marissa to kiss, I knew I had to speak up. "Wait," I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet chapel. "This wedding can't happen." Everyone gasped and looked at me. Marissa's face turned red with anger, her fists clenched. "What's going on?" she spat, furious. I took a deep breath and stared at Marissa firmly. "Marissa, what this means is that I can't stay quiet anymore while you keep lying and manipulating everyone around you." Clara looked pale, realizing what was happening, but I continued before she could interrupt. I showed them all the proof Derek had given me, texts, emails, recordings, that showed Marissa's lies. "For years, you've been spreading lies and turning people against me, pretending to be the innocent one," I said firmly. "But not anymore. It's time for the truth." I showed everyone the evidence, explaining how Marissa had been deceitful and selfish. The chapel fell silent. Marissa's calm facade cracked, and she looked furious and shocked. You're lying," she yelled, reaching out towards me. "How dare you ruin my special day?" But it was too late. The truth was out for everyone to see. As Kevin's family reacted with shock and dismay, it was clear that Marissa's deceit was unraveling before everyone's eyes. She stood exposed, no longer able to maintain her facade. Despite her past actions, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and satisfaction seeing her downfall. The truth had been revealed, and I had won not through trickery, but by exposing the darkness hidden beneath Marissa's lies. The aftermath was chaotic, like a bomb had gone off in the room. The silence was quickly replaced by shouts and gasps as people reacted to the truth. "How could you, Marissa?" someone yelled, their anger palpable. "This was supposed to be my special day." "Your special day was built on lies," I retorted firmly. "You can't deceive people forever." Marissa looked ready to argue, but Kevin stepped forward, his eyes filled with hurt and disbelief. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Were you just using me?" For a moment, there was silence as everyone waited for Marissa's response. I almost felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Almost, but then she put on that fake smile and I saw the cold, calculating look in her eyes. "No, of course not, darling," she said, reaching out to touch Kevin's face. "You know I love you so much. Elias is just trying to cause trouble like she always does." I clenched my fists, trying to control my anger. Didn't she realize that her lies were exposed? Apparently not, as she turned her angry gaze back to me. This is all your fault, she snapped, pointing accusingly at me. If you hadn't interfered, none of this would be happening. Stop, Ron's voice boomed, cutting through the tension. We all turned to see him, his face red with anger and embarrassment. I can't believe what I'm hearing, he said, shaking his head. My own daughter lying and manipulating everyone for her own selfish reasons. Marissa was silent, unable to respond. For once, she seemed speechless in the face of her father's disappointment. I don't even recognize you anymore, Ron said, his voice heavy with sadness. The girl I raised, the one who was kind and loving. She's gone, isn't she? A heavy silence filled the room as we all absorbed the weight of Ron's words. It wasn't just Marissa who felt the impact, but Clara too. They exchanged a tense look, a silent struggle passing between them. Finally, Clara broke the silence. Well? She demanded, her eyes fixed on her daughter. Aren't you going to speak up, defend yourself? But Marissa stayed silent, defeated. She looked smaller than ever, a mere shadow of the manipulative person she had become. Clara snorted in disgust, then stormed out, leaving a shocked silence behind her. Kevin's family followed, their faces showing everything from pity to disgust. And just like that, it was all over. Marissa's big plan had fallen apart, leaving her dreams shattered. As Kevin left, looking devastated, I felt sorry for him. He was just another victim of Marissa's games. But any sympathy I had was quickly replaced by a sense of satisfaction. The truth was out, and Marissa had brought it all on herself. There would be no more lies or manipulation, only the consequences of her actions. In the days after the failed wedding, chaos erupted as news of Marissa's lies spread rapidly. She found herself shunned by the very community she'd once hoped to impress. I'll never forget the sight of her at her mother's door, begging for help after her plans fell apart. Please, Mom, she cried, tears in her eyes. I need your help. I have nowhere else to go. But Clara looked at her with a mix of disgust and pity. Help you, she scoffed. After what you've done? After embarrassing our family? Marissa flinched as if she had been slapped. But you're my mom. You're supposed to support me, no matter what. Support you? Clara shook her head sadly. You don't understand, do you? There's no support left. You've pushed away everyone who cared about you with your selfishness and lies. Her words hit Marissa hard, like a punch to the gut. I could see the realization dawn on her face, the weight of her loneliness settling in. You don't mean that, Marissa whispered, her hand shaking as she reached out. But Clara stepped away, her face now cold and distant. I don't recognize you anymore, she said firmly. The daughter I knew wouldn't have done what you did. You made your choices, Marissa. Now you have to face the consequences. With those final words, Clara turned and walked back inside, leaving Marissa alone on the doorstep, utterly broken. In the weeks that followed, I saw Marissa's once proud demeanor crumble under the weight of her own actions. The places she used to frequent, fancy bars and high-end stores, now treated her with scorn, whispers following her wherever she went. Even her friends deserted her, not wanting to be linked with her disgrace. Through it all, Ron and I stayed strong, our bond growing stronger as Marissa's world fell apart. I'm sorry it had to end like this, Ron said quietly one evening as we watched Marissa walk by, looking defeated. But you were right, she did this to herself. I didn't say anything, just squeezed his hand gently. Words felt insufficient in the face of such a painful situation. As things settled down and our community began to recover from Marissa's lies, Ron and I received an outpouring of support and gratitude. The families we had helped, the students I had taught, they all came together to thank us for standing up against the manipulation and lies that had threatened to tear us apart. In those moments of connection, witnessing human kindness and resilience, I found a newfound peace and purpose that I had been missing during Marissa's tumultuous reign. She tried to tear me down, but it was her own selfishness that led to her downfall, revealing the emptiness beneath her facade. Ron and I would move forward, stronger from the experience. If our story could encourage others to stand against manipulation and embrace honesty, then perhaps something positive could come from Marissa's downfall. I thought Mom had lots of money saved, but turns out she didn't. I told you, right? I think we should make her leave. Why keep someone who doesn't have a job here? I've been living here for 3 months, and my son and his wife used up all my money. They treated me like I was just here to clean up after them. I got tired of it all, so I left quietly. Then my son called me, sounding really worried. Mom, what's happening? Tommy asked urgently on the phone. Right around that time, something I did became big news all over the United States. My name is Sarah, and I'm 70 years old. I lived in France for a while, but then I got sick and had to come back to the United States. My old apartment was gone, so I asked my son Tommy and his wife if I could stay with them for a bit. Tommy is my only son, and he's 44 years old, working in an office. He and his wife Alice don't have any kids, and they seem to live quietly. We lost touch while I was away, but I decided to reconnect, and Tommy seemed happy to hear from me. I explained my situation and asked if I could stay for a bit. Tommy reluctantly said yes. It felt awkward to ask, but the joy of being with my family again made me brave. Feeling a bit nervous but mostly happy, I took a taxi from the airport to their house. When I got there, Tony and Alice greeted me at the door. Tommy seemed glad to see me, but Alice didn't look happy at all. I'm planning to stay here for a few months. My stuff will arrive later, I told them. I left my small bag and went to the living room. We talked about our lives, jobs, and my time in France. When Tommy asked why I moved to France, I just said, I'm getting old and wanted to enjoy living in the countryside there. Tommy chuckled, but Alice still seemed unhappy. Then we talked about my health issues. I've been feeling really dizzy, and the doctors think it might be Meniere's disease. When it happens, everything seems to spin around me and I feel sick. I don't feel safe living alone, so I wanted to stay with them until I feel better. After our chat, I went back to the entrance to grab my things from my bag. As I was sorting out my stuff in the hallway, I heard Tony and Alice talking. Tommy, are you really okay with Mom staying here? I don't want to live with an old lady, Alice said. She's my mom, come on. Plus, you work part-time, so it's not like you'll always be here, Tony replied. Yeah, but what about her days off? How long is she going to stay? I want her gone, Alice insisted. Don't say that. Mom will leave eventually. Let's talk about money tomorrow. Just keep your voice down. She might hear you, Tony warned. She can't hear us. She's old. They say old age brings sharp ears for insults, Alice remarked. And there I was, listening to their talk in the chilly hallway. I feel bad for suddenly intruding on Tommy and Alice's lives. I'm sure it's a big hassle for them. But I'm really happy to be spending time with them after all these years apart. When Tommy was young, I raised him alone after my husband passed away. We didn't have much, and Tony faced his own struggles with sickness and all. This doesn't make up for that, but I wanted to come here to share my apologies and gratitude. That's why I came to this house. It's a shame I'm not welcomed, but they have their own lives to lead. I went to the guest room they gave me, trying to calm my anxious heart. The next morning, Tony left for work, leaving just Alice and me. While I was doing some crafting in the living room, Alice came up to me. Hey Sarah, can you not make such a mess? I glanced around and saw fabric bits and threads everywhere. Oh sorry, I'll tidy up. Do you know what this is? I showed her the little pouch I was sewing with a cute turtle design. This is a turtle pouch. I love turtles, so I make crafts with them. It even has a zipper on its shell, I explained. That's nice, but Sarah, you can't just hang around here all day. Alice interrupted, clearly uninterested. At least go somewhere else when I'm not working. You're getting in the way. But I get dizzy if I go out too much, I said. I'll drag you to the community center nearby. You can stay there during the day. I have things to do at home, Alice said firmly, without room for discussion. And also help with the chores while you're here. You're not just here to relax. It's the least you can do since we're letting you stay, she added, leaving me surprised. So I finally said, okay, and got up slowly. From then on, I found myself doing all the housework, even though I felt dizzy and achy. I took on the chores that Alice and Tommy seemed to expect me to do, almost like I was their housekeeper. I noticed that Alice was always glued to her phone, maybe neglecting the housework before I arrived. That evening, when Tommy came home, he approached me with a smile and asked, Mom, did you bring your bank card? I looked at him over my reading glasses, nodded, and got up. I took out my bank card from the little pouch I made and handed it to Tommy. He quickly checked it, and his expression changed. Wait, Mom, is this all the money you have saved? Do you have any other accounts? he asked, his face tightening. That's all I have. I don't need much at my age, and I don't have any health problems, I said, smiling. But as the conversation went on, Tommy's expression grew darker. Wow, this isn't much money at all, not even $10,000. You said you were living well abroad, so I assumed. Tommy kept questioning me, asking if I had more money hidden away. When I said no, he sighed and seemed disappointed. Fine, I'll keep hold of this card for now. I'm doing you a favor by letting you stay here, so this is the least you can do. After Tony got my account details, he took my bank and debit cards and left the room. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear Tony sighing loudly through the wall that separated our rooms. Oh, what a disappointment. I thought Mom had a lot of money. But it turns out our finances are in bad shape because of her. I shouldn't have agreed to let her stay. We should kick her out. She's not bringing us any benefits, Tony complained. It seemed like both of them were pretty sure of themselves. They talked openly in the next room, almost as if they wanted me to hear. In my cold bed, I held back tears of loneliness and sadness. The next day, since Alice had the day off, she drove me to the local community center. I opened my bag to continue my crafting in the lounge area, but realized I had forgotten the fabric I needed at home. I hesitated but couldn't bring myself to ask Alice to go back and get it. Luckily, I wasn't feeling too dizzy that day. I knew the area, so I decided to take a walk back home to get the fabric. When I finally reached home, I peeked through the window and saw Alice with a man I didn't recognize. At first, I thought he might be a guest, but they seemed really close. I hesitated outside for a moment, then decided not to go in. It dawned on me that maybe they wanted me out so I wouldn't interrupt their affair. Back at the community center, I couldn't stop thinking about Alice and the man. I decided to call someone for advice. From then on, I avoided mentioning the situation and continued interacting with Tony and his wife. But whenever I left the house, I made sure to leave a red turtle pouch on the living room side table, just to let them know I was aware of what was going on. 3 months went by like this. I had been staying with Tony's family for a while now, essentially becoming their household maid. Whenever I was at home, I had to do endless chores. And when Alice was around, I was sent off to the community center. Most of my savings had been drained by Tommy, who had a gambling addiction and spent a lot of his time on lotteries and slot machines. His obsession with money seemed to stem from the financial struggles he faced as a child. I tried to talk to him about it at first, but it always made him angry. After 3 months of this, I couldn't take it anymore. One night before a long weekend, I decided to do something I had been thinking about. Tommy, Alice, I want to thank you for letting me stay with you. Tommy, I know things were tough for you when you were young because we didn't have much money. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, but I'm grateful. I took out a homemade turtle pouch from the table. It was green with a zipper on the shell. This is a token of my appreciation for both of you. I hope you'll accept it. To my surprise, neither Tony nor Alice showed any interest in my handmade gift. Mom, that's enough. Are we really out of money? Can't you think of some French account or something? Tony said, I've told you, we're out of money. Look, I put a lot of effort into making this. Can't you just accept it as a symbol of my love? Remember how happy you used to be when I would fill the shell with candy and a little pocket money? Tommy started getting more and more irritated. I'm not a kid anymore. I don't want something like this. Sarah, how much longer do you plan on depending on us? It's getting annoying, Tommy continued. Both Tony and his wife gave me a cold look. Desperate, I tried to remind Tommy. Do you remember Joe? He helped us out in our old apartment. What? I don't remember. Stop bringing up old stories. Are we done? Shocked into silence, I held onto the turtle pouch tightly, feeling the texture of the paper inside. The next day, Tony and his wife went on vacation, leaving me behind. After our conversation the night before, I had decided it was time for me to leave as well. So I quickly packed my bag with the help of a arranged carrier and sent it off to my home in France. I made sure to include the red turtle pouch in my carry-on bag. Before leaving, I left a simple note on the table thanking them and saying goodbye, and then I left the house where I had been staying for 3 months. Instead of going straight home to France, I stayed in a hotel in the US for a while. I had things to take care of, and I figured Tony and his wife would contact me eventually. Sure enough, about 2 weeks later, Tony called me. Mom, what's going on? That turtle pouch, it's yours, right? I could hear Tony's frustration over the phone. Ah, you noticed. I wasn't surprised when I saw the news on TV. Inside the turtle-shaped pouch that I had planned to give to Tommy and his wife was a check for $1 million. It was my way of thanking them for all they had done for me and apologizing for any trouble I may have caused them in the past. Some people might think it's shallow to make amends with money, but I had been dreaming of the day when I could give it to them, saving up bit by bit over the course of 40 years. Before meeting Tony after a long time, I did some investigating and discovered that he was in debt. He had tried to pay off his gambling debts by gambling even more, only to find himself in even deeper trouble. Despite having a steady job, he was struggling. All I wanted was for him to clear his debts and leave peacefully, but when I offered to help, they refused to accept my gesture. It seemed like they had completely forgotten about the kindness they had shown to my family and me in the past. So I decided to divide the $1 million check into smaller sums and donate them to charities and welfare organizations across America. I put the donations in the same handmade turtle pouch and sent them anonymously. The turtle pouch became a sensation, making headlines and trending on social media. On social media, Alice's son commented, "Hey mom, isn't that the turtle pouch?" "Yeah, mate. So does that mean you were going to give us one filled with money too?" "Yes, exactly. That was my way of saying thank you and I'm sorry. I've been making both the pouch and saving the money to give to you." "Well, you could have told us. We would have accepted it. If you didn't want my feelings, then you don't need my money either." Tony's voice was filled with rage as he yelled on the phone, completely losing control. "That money belongs to me. How dare you trick me? Give it back." I couldn't bear to listen any longer, so I pulled the phone away from my ear. After a moment, I spoke up. "Okay, let's calm down. You're giving me a headache. There's one more turtle pouch left, and if you really want it, it's yours." After some time, Tony finally calmed down and repeated his request for the turtle pouch. We agreed to meet later at a cafe. On the appointed day, I brought the last red turtle pouch in an envelope to our meeting spot. Tony and his wife were already there and immediately demanded the money before I even had a chance to sit down. As I quietly took out the red turtle pouch, Tony grabbed it immediately and unzipped its shell. But inside wasn't a check. It was a small electronic device. "What's this?" Tony asked, puzzled as he examined the device. He found a button and pressed it, and a voice recording started playing. Alice, who was standing next to Tony, went pale as she heard her own voice talking affectionately with another man, someone who clearly wasn't Tommy. Confused and shocked, Alice tried to snatch the recording from Tommy's hand, but he held onto it tightly. As they struggled, I opened the envelope I had brought and laid out several photos on the table. Pictures of Alice having an affair with another man in their home. Confronted with undeniable evidence, Alice became flustered and kept asking why. Tommy picked up each photo, studying them carefully. "Ever since I came to your house, something didn't feel right. A friend suggested I hire someone to investigate, and they even offered to cover the costs. What's wrong with you? Why would you do this?" Alice demanded. "You're my son's wife. It's heartbreaking to think that family would deceive each other. You'll understand when you're older. I suppose fate brought me here to uncover your infidelity." "Have you been lying to me all this time? Since when, Tommy?" Tony remained silent, and now it was Alice's turn to speak. "And what about you wasting all our money on gambling? I only spend what I earn, and you have your part-time jobs, so you should have some money saved up too." Listening to their argument, it became clear that this couple had been keeping their financial struggles hidden until now. Neither of them had any money left. "Alice, you were $40,000 in debt. You've been giving all your earnings to your affair partner. I had the investigator check your finances." Both Tony and Alice were shocked, and they started shouting at each other. I was stunned when I heard the results of the investigation. This couple was on the verge of bankruptcy. "Look, if we get Mom's money, we can pay back the debt. So give it to us now." I donated all the money. The only thing left is this red turtle figurine. He wasted my savings on gambling. "What? You're kidding me. All of it?" In a fit of anger, Tony lunged at me across the table. Other customers started to pay attention, and the staff rushed over. "The $1 million is mine. It was supposed to be mine. Give it back." Tony's rage escalated to the point where the police had to be called to restrain him. After some intervention from the officers, They kindly escorted me back to my hotel due to concerns about Tony's aggressive behavior. A week later, Tony and Alice's relationship had completely broken down due to the affair and financial troubles. They ended up getting divorced. Tony, now single, became even more engrossed in gambling, accumulating more debt. He was caught attempting to embezzle company funds, which led to him being fired. His outburst at the cafe was captured on video and spread on social media, making it hard for him to find another job. Unable to bear the shame, Tony cut off all contact and disappeared. After the divorce, Alice had nobody to turn to and moved into a rundown public housing unit, living alone. Just as I was about to make a donation for turtle rescue, an online post I made joking about my own turtle went viral. Alice began facing harassment and stalking, which eventually affected her part-time job and resulted in her being fired. Even the man she was having an affair with grew tired of her and left. Now, with no source of income, she relies on temporary assistance for needy families to survive. After returning to my home in France and finishing unpacking in my apartment, I changed into a dress with ease. As I reviewed some work documents, I heard a noise at the entrance. It seemed Joe, my roommate, had returned home. "Hey, Madam President, welcome back. How was your trip to America?" Joe greeted me with a smile as he set down his coat and bags. Joe is 75 years old and was a resident in the same apartment complex where my son Tommy and I lived years ago. During that difficult time, I was struggling with poverty after losing my husband and caring for a young Tommy who had asthma. We had no utilities, and with no one to turn to, I felt desperate and considered giving up. It was Joe and his wife, our upstairs neighbors, who saved us. They became our lifelines. Please call me Sarah. I'm back, and look, I brought back many souvenirs. Wow, all my favorites. Thanks, I'll take some to the storytelling event at the community center tomorrow. Joe examined each of the souvenirs piled up on the table, his face glowing with happiness. After we had gotten back on our feet, Joe and his wife moved away for work. Years later, we ran into each other in the city, and I started helping with a support program for the needy that Joe had founded. By then, Joe's wife had passed away, and we became business and life partners. I've been leading the organization since Joe retired a few years ago. What began as a small initiative between Joe and myself has blossomed into a large-scale international organization over the past 30 years. Currently, our main focus is on supporting single mothers and their children. A few years back, we relocated to France to study their advanced support systems. Although we've gained recognition in France, we're still relatively unknown in America. I'm planning to expand our activities there soon and wanted to spend some quality time with Tony and his family before they found out about my work. In the end, I couldn't make them understand how I felt, but that's their decision to make. Even if it was only for a brief moment, I was grateful to have had the opportunity to spend time together as a family. Now at the age of 70, I refuse to let my age define me. There's still so much I want and need to accomplish. As I straightened my back in my dress, I began to ponder the content of my upcoming international speech for tomorrow. Why is the money we sent to Mom only $670? My husband shouts angrily. I had to stop sending more money. Look at what's left in your mom's account on this paper, I reply straightforwardly. My name is Penelope and I'm 42 years old. I work part-time at a supermarket. I have 2 sons, Ethan in 8th grade and Leo in 6th grade. My husband is Asher, who's 43 years old. Asher's mom, my mother-in-law, is 67 years old. Ever since Asher's dad passed away, my mother-in-law has been living alone. Even though she gets some money from a pension, it's not much. When my father-in-law died, we talked about it. He raised Asher, and I feel indebted to him. I figure he'll need more help in the future too. So I've decided to send her $335 every month as a sort of caregiving payment, I explain. They told us the house loan is paid off now. My late father-in-law left behind $200,000. As per his will, Asher, being his only child, agreed to give the entire amount to my mother-in-law. I thought maybe we could manage with that money. It's scary living without any income and seeing your savings shrink. My mother-in-law understands this too. So she suggested I give her a monthly allowance. It's more of a symbolic gesture, I add. But less than a year after we made that decision, my mother-in-law called in tears, sparking an argument about the allowance because of COVID. I can't afford to go to the cheaper supermarket, so I can't save any money, she says. COVID can be scary for some people, my husband acknowledges. Yeah, it's scary to go out. I agree. So if there's something you need, just tell me. I can pick it up from the specific store on my way home from work, I offer. But my mother-in-law insists that's not the problem. It's not just groceries, it's everyday items too. Oh, I understand now. It's not only food. Okay, I'll go to that store for everyday items as well. I promise. Honestly, do I have to spell it out for you? It's not just groceries and everyday items. It's things like hair dye to cover gray hair too, she shouts. In other words, she's saying, please don't make me explain so much. The allowance isn't enough. My husband, feeling guilty, says, I'm sorry, mother, and decides to increase it to $670 without asking me first. Wow, $670 is a lot of money. I couldn't hide my surprise at the decision made without asking me first. That's like all the money I earn from my part-time job. And soon, our older child will be taking entrance exams, and we can't skip sending them to cram school. I asked the store manager for more hours, but it's been hard to balance work and home. Mom, you're never home at night, my younger child complained. I'm sorry, sweetie. Mommy is working hard to earn money for us, I said, feeling guilty. Today, I made a really cool piggy bank at school and got praise for it. But I can't even talk about it now. He banged on the table. I'm sorry. I'll buy you the toy you wanted for your birthday. I promise I'll work hard for it, I reassured him, promising to buy the toy my second son wanted. Then my husband walked by. Just wait a bit for the toy. Grandma is making sacrifices too. Mommy isn't working just for toys, she's working for Grandma, he said before leaving me feeling guilty. Even for our child's birthday gift, we were cutting back for my mother-in-law's sake. And the way he said it made me wonder, who was I really working for? My husband's words left me confused. Surprisingly, our younger child stayed and patted my shoulder. Mom, you're doing your best. Don't worry, Mom. I don't need the toy right away, my younger child reassures me. But that feeling of uncertainty returned when my mother-in-law called. Did you get the envelope? She asked, her voice trembling. Yes, I replied. You can probably guess what happened next. Indeed, today I received an envelope from my mother-in-law. When I opened it, I found a copy of a bank statement inside. I quickly checked the remaining balance. I was surprised and my voice slipped out unintentionally. $6. It's less than $10 now. Can you see it? My mother-in-law seemed to understand that I had seen the contents of the envelope and her voice quivered with tears. And now, with prices going up, I can't even afford to pay the electricity and gas bills, she sobbed. But I tried to keep talking while looking at the statement. That's enough. All you do is tell me what to do and what not to do, going on about useless things and procrastinating. Last time, you talked about running errands for household items and groceries, but those were useless solutions. That's why I called it this hour. Asher, are you there? Take over for me. My husband had already come close during the phone conversation, and he said, Mom, let me take over, as he took the receiver from me. Yeah, Asher responded. Then he exclaimed, oh no, letting her use up the entire inheritance, letting the balance drop below $10. I'm sorry, I think this is definitely a misfortune for my humble parents. Yeah, I understand. So starting from next month, if I send $2,000 each month, will that be okay? He blurted out suddenly. What? $2,000? How could the allowance be that much? I stood there in shock as I listened. After he hung up the phone, Asher shouted angrily. Why is the allowance for Mom only $670? I told you it should be at least $670. I thought you had increased it. But you see, inside that envelope, I tried to explain, but he interrupted me and continued. I told you I owe her for raising me. In the future, she'll probably need more help. If you think of it as caregiving expenses, why is my mother in such a heartbreaking situation? His voice grew louder as he expressed his frustration. I was already stretched to my limit. Even the $335 allowance was tough to manage. I thought increasing it to $670 was an achievement. I worked more hours at my part-time job to cope. I even learned to cook more affordable meals. I managed the household expenses with all those efforts, but it wasn't enough, and there were sacrifices. I did it for my children just like I do everything else, She scolded me abruptly, deciding on a $2,000 allowance without consulting me and without even considering how our allowances were being used according to my mother-in-law's bank statement. Above all, I'm working for the sake of my sons, not for my mother-in-law. That's enough, I said in a cold voice. I realize that when a person gets too angry, their voice becomes quiet. What do you mean? It's fine. Are you getting defensive now? My husband mocked me. I was no longer willing to yield to his words. After seeing a copy of that statement, I absolutely couldn't accept such a ridiculous proposal as a $2,000 allowance. I've had enough of a son who blindly believes and supports a money-seeking mother and grandmother. People who can't prioritize our family don't belong here. Get out. If you want to support your mother so badly, then go live with her. You can happily go to hell together. I firmly pushed my husband out the front door, then I walked him out. I shoved the envelope in his face. I'll send your belongings back and you'll cover the shipping. Take a close look at the contents of your mother's bank statement, huh? My husband asked, but I just closed the door with a laugh. Bang. What's going on, Mom? Hearing the commotion, our two children came downstairs. Well, you two, your father said he wants to spend more money on you, and he asked Grandma to spend more too. I couldn't stand it any longer, so I explained to the children. I see. If you decided this, Mom, it must be for the best for this house, my older child said. I'll follow your lead, they added. Well, that toy, I'll wait for it until I'm an adult, no matter how many years it takes, my younger son said, trying to cheer me up. Thank you, my sons. 1 week later, my husband called out to me, help me. I responded coldly, what about? Could you at least listen to my story? He pleaded. I know what you meant when you said to look at the statement. I can't believe after all this time that I know what that means, he stammered, but he kept talking, clinging to his speech. I had to hold back my laughter on the phone. I can't believe that you would blindly trust your mother and then suggest such an outrageous proposal. I can't believe you're calling me now, wanting to get back together. You really have no idea how clueless you are, huh? That's just who you are. You question everything without realizing your own indecisiveness. You casually involve others and act surprised when it's pointed out, I said. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to have one final conversation. I want to say those last words in person. It's important for the children and closure matters. I agreed to meet my husband in our house. Oh, and make sure to bring all of your mother's credit card statements, okay? I instructed. My husband and mother-in-law arrived, their lives undoubtedly in disarray. I thought this meeting would be a complete disaster. If you had just calmed down and looked at the statement, you would have figured it out. My husband insulted me outright. You ended up believing your mother, didn't you? I responded calmly. So, can you show me the statement? My husband placed the statement on the table with trembling hands, and as I looked at it, I asked, what did you discover? And then my mom, she used the money I sent her for electricity, gas, food. It wasn't just for living expenses, he confessed in a barely audible voice. It wasn't just for living expenses, was it? Actually, the other purpose was the main one, right? Please say it with your own mouth, I urged. She was a member of an escort club. I'll let my husband tell you himself, his withered confession accompanied by my mother-in-law's trembling lips. I was absolutely delighted, and I couldn't help but laugh. That's right. Your mother, whom you believe more than me, was a woman who spent money on male escorts while lying about not being able to pay the increased electricity and gas bills and came begging to her own son. I exclaimed with glee. The statement showed transactions at an escort club named Romeo, followed by expenses at high-end restaurants and bars. She was spending over $40,000 a month. After a good laugh, I took a sip of cold water to calm down, then continued speaking. Even at nearly 70 years old, how could she pick up a young, handsome guy at an escort club and take him to all those fancy places? I don't understand how she ended up in such a situation, begging for money at her own son's house. I'm really curious if she ended up addicted or something like that, I remarked, poking at her wounded pride. Unexpectedly, my mother-in-law spoke up, saying, he told me he feels love for the princess who gives him an allowance. He even gives me presents. This made me spit out the water I had been drinking in surprise. I couldn't help but giggle and laugh. Referring to a 67-year-old as a princess is quite something, isn't it? Well, some people fall for words easily, like my mother-in-law becoming like a man's personal ATM. So they'll keep saying those words, won't they? I took another sip of water. If you're giving an escort guy an allowance, you must be withdrawing a considerable amount, right? It wasn't my mother-in-law who visibly shuddered, huh? The one who reacted was actually my husband. I placed a piece of paper on the table. It was fun meeting you today. I love you. Please request me again. Read the business card with a handwritten message. Huh? My husband stared at the business card on the table. I didn't expect to be kicked out of the house all of a sudden. I didn't even tidy up my own room, did I? He stammered. I found your stuff while I was cleaning up your things, even the strange money deductions. It all makes sense now. Yes, that's right. So it's not just my fault, my mother-in-law shouted hoarsely. There was a glass of lemonade in front of her, but she hadn't touched it at all. It might be expected, since she had been continuously blamed. However, as the target of blame shifted, she attempted an unexpected turnaround. My husband's voice trembled as he reacted to this blow. But because I've been laughed at this much, am I the only one being ridiculous? Isn't that so unfair? My husband retorted. Huh? No, just wait a minute. You're making me spend this much money, and now you're saying this? That's my line. Asking for money because your allowance isn't enough. I can't believe you're into escort girls too. Like parent, like child, must be an annoying way to spend money. It's over now, isn't it? Both of you are done. At my words, both my husband and mother-in-law had no words left. Hey kids, come down here for a sec. I called up to the second floor. The two kids came down. I need to talk to you about something serious. Mom and I have decided it's best if we split up because Dad and Grandma have been using a lot of money selfishly. I explained honestly. Dad has been giving money to another woman, and Grandma has been spending a lot on a younger man. They're asking for even more. My husband tried to stop me from saying it in front of the kids, but I felt they needed to know the truth. The older child spoke up, agreeing that Dad shouldn't hide things. They pointed out how Dad said there wasn't enough money for toys while spending it on other people. The younger one added that their older sibling probably needed money for tutoring. That's right. I want to save money for your future, not spend it on strangers, I said firmly. Hearing this, the older child said, then it's goodbye from us too. The younger one agreed, saying they could manage without toys. They both thought it was wrong for Dad to spend money on someone else instead of us. In the end, it was clear that I had to cut ties with both my husband and my mother-in-law. Because of my divorce from my husband and mother-in-law's extravagant spending, I received a significant amount of alimony. Sadly, they continued their reckless habits, and I could see the consequences coming. Eventually, they hit rock bottom, accumulating debts so severe that they had to give up their house. Despite having to pay alimony and child support, they seemed unable to manage their finances wisely. I refused to give them any leeway. They need to fulfill their obligations entirely. I've taken up part-time work to support us. Although we can't afford many luxuries, the three of us are making ends meet decently. It's not extravagant, but I'm determined to do everything I can for my children. My hope is to continue living peacefully with the